of the Coty Foundation, and it is my exceptional pleasure to welcome you all at the first International Social Transformation Conference in this beautiful city of Split. It is the University of Split eager support that made our today's historical gathering possible. Thus, I have a pleasure to invite to this stage the Vice Rector, Professor Brianka Ramniak.
Rector of the University of Split. This is the first International Social Transformation Conference, and I am very proud that it is taking place here at our university, in this beautiful building, at the Faculty of Economics, and also very important in our city Split. The main question of this conference is energy the money of the future? The conference is going to be the largest event in Europe devoted to alternative monetary models. As you know, around 150 delegates and speakers, among whom prominent scholars, scientists, and economists, will gather to discuss the fundamentals of monetary system and propose sustainable monetary models. The main focus of the conference will be the relationship between the dynamics of financial and energy flows and the visibility of energy-related currencies. Finally, I wish to all of you one pleasant stay here at the Faculty of Economics. I wish all to you the success of this conference, and please enjoy in this 1,700 years old town, Split. Welcome once again.
Thank you, Professor Ramniak. I am sure you are all here just like me, fascinated by the modern beauty of the economics faculty, which hospitably opened its doors to our conference. It is an honor for me to introduce to you the faculty's dean, Professor Željko Garača.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, representatives of various institutions, colleagues, all participants for the first International Social Transformation Conference. I'm honored as the host of the conference to welcome you to the University of Split Faculty of Economics. I especially want to welcome Mr. Josef Harris, I said the good spirit of the conference, the founder of the Coty Foundation, which is the main sponsor of this conference. I also welcome some few important people like academician Ivo Schlaus, the president of the World Academy of the Art and Science, Professor Academic Bogdan Đurović, the president of the Montenegro Academy of Art and Science, Professor Raul Weiler, who will be the key speaker of this conference. As you know, the city of Split is the organizer of the conference, as co-organizer for us, and I welcome the representative of the city of Split, Mr. Nikola Horvat. When a few months ago, I met with the organizers of the conference for the first time, after 5 minutes, someone yet said, after 3 minutes, I promised the full support in this project. Today I'm happy that this conference came to its realization just at the Faculty of Economics in Split. Although the title of the conference does not refer directly to the economy, the main topic of the conference is very appropriate to the Faculty of Economics. The current economic crisis has renewed interest in the need for global monetary reform. The ultimate aim of this first International Conference on Social Transformation, Energy, Currency is to place the study of alternative monetary system within the mainstream of economic thinking and the way global monetary reform onto the political agenda. Since the monetary system is extremely complex, it would be necessary to examine multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary, and this conference intends that. The path to the new monetary model will certainly be long and uncertain, but is necessary to start thinking of our future and within this aspect. The proposed model, based on energy as a primary value, may be controversial, but I think that a serious progress cannot be realized if we go on beaten tracks. To all participants of International Social Transformation Conference, I wish successful work and that the conference will provide answers to the questions put to its task. I must mention that I am particularly pleased to be part of this event in Split, especially the Tesla initiative takes action to establish the Nikola Tesla Memorial Prize in Arts and Science. Nikola Tesla has not experienced the honor he deserves for his contribution to the betterment of mankind, and this is the great opportunity to rectify this historical injustice. Thanks to all who in any way took part in this project. I wish all guests to have a pleasant stay in our city, for which we used to say the most beautiful city in the world. I want to feel you comfortable in the areas of our faculty and to achieve expected results of this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Garecha. The help that the organizers received from the faculty staff, led by the Dean and Professor Maja Fredotovic, is truly unmeasurable. I would ask for a special extra applause for them. Thank you. Perhaps many of you wondered why the Conference on Social Sciences is dedicated to the memory of Nikola Tesla, who has been an electrical engineer and whose birthday is today. We hope that the following short video will introduce more clarity to this issue. The impact of Tesla's inventions goes far beyond the scope of engineering. They literally shaped the modern world. And it is easy for us all here to see the profound symbolism in the clash of Tesla's breakthrough ideas with the profit-centered thinking of his epoch. The video I'm going to show is a bit unusual. We did not participate in its production and disagree with certain assertions, but it has been prepared by the true enthusiasts, one of the reasons that determined our choice.
Nikola Tesla was born on July 10, 1856 in the territory of modern-day Croatia to his two Serbian parents. Tesla grew up into a bright, inquisitive, yet eccentric child who found himself fascinated by the world around him. Tesla once tried to fly by jumping off the roof of a barn while holding onto an umbrella. He devised a bug-powered motor using June bugs, but had to abort his experiment after a friend decided to eat some of the bugs. Tesla once attempted to generate electricity by rubbing two cats together, which resulted in two very mad cats and a scratched-up Tesla. On June 6, 1884, Tesla arrived in the United States. He was hired by Thomas Edison to do basic electrical engineering, but moved up to redesigning the direct current generators that ran Edison's business. Edison offered Tesla $50,000, or about $1.1 million in today's currency, to make these improvements. After completing this assignment, Tesla asked about the payment for his work. Edison didn't pay out the money. He claimed that he wasn't serious about the payment, that Tesla didn't understand American humor. Tesla eventually left Edison's company and partnered with George Westinghouse in 1888 to commercialize his system of alternating current. The problem here is that alternating current competed with direct current, which Thomas Edison built his entire monopoly on. Thus began the war of the currents. Edison started a massive smear campaign against Tesla and alternating current, trying to scare people away from using it. He spread false information about it, lobbied against its use, and went so far as to electrocute a circus elephant in public. Basically, Edison was a jerk. Direct current had plenty of its own faults. It was the cause of death of countless children and created numerous house fires. Also, the maximum reach of direct current was about 2 miles, which meant a substation had to be built to continue the current. To this day, they would still be building substations if they were going to get electricity across the U.S. Tesla's alternating current could go for hundreds of miles. Lights running on alternate current were bright white, unlike dull yellow lights running on direct currents. Eventually, Edison had to give in to the demands of the people and had to go with alternating current. Tesla's influence spreads much further than electricity. He had over 700 patents and came up with ideas such as robots, spark plugs, the electric arc lamp, an X-ray device, bladeless turbines, wireless communication, laser technology, neon lights, remote control, cellular communication, radio, an electrical bath to remove germs, radar, and much more. Tesla died from heart failure in a room of the New Yorker Hotel on January 7, 1943. Despite his fame and influence on the world, he died with significant debts and all alone. While Edison is known as the inventor of the century, Tesla is only acknowledged as a paragraph in today's history books, forgotten and unappreciated. Thus ends the story of Nikola Tesla, genius and inventor.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that many of you already had a chance to glimpse the fairy tale beauty of the ancient and ever-young Split, the true Adriatic pearl. The comprehensive support of the city administration, their keen initiative, surpassed all our expectations. Please welcome the head of international cooperation for the city of Split, Mr. Nikola Horvat.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished organizers, colleagues. It should be really Mrs. Angela Kalisko, Deputy Mayor, but unfortunately she couldn't because of the urgent tasks in communication with the Croatian government. She couldn't make it this afternoon, but she sends her greetings, and I would like to greet her in her name and in mine personal. Would like to address you at the beginning of this event on behalf of the City of Split administration and wish you heartily welcome in our city. I believe that in spite of your serious dedication to the work during the conference, you will find the opportunity to get to know the city of Split, to see at least the part of a rich cultural heritage of this town, which is proud of more than 17 centuries of its history, the town which has developed from Roman Emperor's palace and has become, well, not more, not less, but the most beautiful place in the world. The preciousness of our heritage is recognized by UNESCO, which has entered our old city core in its register already in far 1979. I hope that during your stay you will truly experience the Mediterranean temperament, not only temperature, the temperament of the citizens who have always been welcoming their guests with open hearts. In spite of its 1700 years of history, Split is in fact a young city. I tell it so because the University of Split and Faculty of Economics, one of its components, the present venue of your conference, has 26,000 students. We are proud of professors and scientists of our university, and as well of students educated here, fully confident that a city supported by such an university has unquestionable future. One of development features of our town is tourism, particularly congress and cultural tourism. The clients we would like to attract are highly demanding. However, I'm sure that we shall manage in doing so, in spite of the fact that the moment is really unfavorable considering the economic situation worldwide. The topic that this conference deals with is very complex, and modern times place new challenges ahead all of us. It is hard to say that the future is uncertain, since it is always such. However, we all certainly understand that mankind simply has to make some changes if it wants to survive. Hoping that this conference is going to contribute to tracing a brighter future I wish you a lot of success in your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harold, on behalf of all organizing committee. And please send our compliments to Ms. Ikovic. Now, the time has come for the keynote presentations. And I would like to invite our three speakers to join me here at the Presidium. Professor Raul Weiler, Professor Momir Đurović, and Professor Ivo Schlaus. Our first speaker is a name synonymous with advanced thinking on sustainability. He has published widely on this field with the Club of Rome. He is former president of the European chapter of the Club of Rome. Currently, he teaches a unique course on ethics at the Leuven University and has advised the EU on many occasions. Dear colleagues, please welcome Professor Raul Weiler.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. So the initiative to organize meetings, discussions, opportunities about the transformation in socials and others is a major concern of many people, thinkers and activists. So I'll try to say some words on where the question mark is the civilization, our civilization in danger, or as a whole, the entire planet. And so let me give some names of people who have written about it, and some of you may know them all, by the way, but they're known. Lester Brown from the International, the EPI, sorry, Earth Policy Institute, Washington, D.C. Dennis Meadows, of whom I showed two slides, has been one of the co-authors of the famous report of the Club of Rome, The Limits to Growth, 1972. This year we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of the report, which is somewhere in the direction of Tesla, perhaps. James Lovelock, the writer of a hypothesis in the beginning of Gaia, which is absolutely fabulous to my understanding, and is now, well, evolving to a theory, an accepted theory, at least for parts of it, the extension. And last, very loved author is Edward O. Wilson, biologist of Harvard, who has written many books, and there is one I certainly would recommend. And this last chapter, the title of this last chapter is Humanity Suicidal? So apart from that, these are pictures of opinions, of analysis, of observations for many years. In the meantime, since about 20 years, the IPCC is born, is resembling now about 2,000 scientists or even more, and it contributed, to my understanding, in an extraordinary way, the understanding of our planet, of our Earth. So we cannot anymore exclude the thinking that is going on, even when mistakes are made. But mistakes are still human characteristic, I would say. Before starting the reasoning on civilization and the change and transformation of world vision, or to come to another one, the first slide is from Dennis Meadows. He's known and repeats the again the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. So where we were, and no, sorry, I wanted to. I wanted to point. Is there a red light? No, the laser point. Sorry. So yes, there it is. So that was for the year 2000. What we're observing now and where we come from. The next slide is also from Dennis Meadows, and that is indicating there. I presume the data are correct. However, one cannot doubt about the data which are accessible to us about energy and fossil energy, is that from a certain point on, the return on investment is slowing down. Good. The freight. I have two other slides from a well-known report from German energy, a great German experiment on renewable. I recommend to read that in the sense that what happens in Germany, or the planning to go to 2050, to be able to produce 80% of the electricity by renewable energy, by renewable sources. This is a significant figure of what is going on. It is a policy figure, of course, so we don't know if this will be maintained along the democratic process, but nevertheless, yeah. The following one is, so the big, sorry. This one here, the 80% of the evolution would be good. This is Germany, the picture. Next slide, very significant, has been a study made, last published this year, June 2012. And the German one is from 2009 or 2010, so quite recent, is what is going on in the US, or what is going on in the thinking in the Harvard Business School. And so I bring that. What is presented there is what is going on for 23 countries, oil producers, the increasing of the capacity to produce, the increase by much of that. And in total it's about 20%. This represents, that picture represents the investment which is going on to have more fossil resources for energy purposes. Well, there is a text, I leave it to read. So we have there two fantastic opposite pictures of what the future, not so far, 50 years about, can be or will be. The US is the business as usual. Germany, with Europe, but Germany especially as the biggest industrial nation in the EU and Central Europe inclusive, as a vision to deal with the situation, Earth situation, many people think we are. Now, so in fact, when we look, say that our civilization is in danger, or we are looking for a new vision, I go back to 2,000 years ago, which is not so long for the city, I heard, and I visited yesterday, that the Western world European world has been based on two premises. First, the human species is above all other, and I add, the human species has been created by a creator, and I leave the other unspecified further. That's the first one. So the human species can dominate and play master of order. The second one, by the same origin, if I may, or the same roots, is that the Earth's resources are for free. What does it mean? What does it mean, first, the human species? The human species has, in this philosophy, in this world vision, in this approach, taken out of the natural environment. So the nature is away. And there are reasons for, but that's our situation. That is, it has been in that definition, in that vision, the way that we are now, we are still under influence. And the second one is that the resources are for free, and there are also reasons for that. So we, being the master, so we can do what we want. And at noon, in a discussion with colleagues, so when something is for free, it's very dangerous, unless one accepts that there are limits. And that, okay, we are not so far. But all that will mean that we live in a value system, and that is the essential point, based on these two premises. So, what has been the evolution, and where is my projection, is that the first we had a theocratic or theocentric world vision in Europe. Maybe afterwards in other places as well, but then which has evolved to an anthropocentric world vision, with inclusion of a number of religious premises, and which has been changed in a long process which started in the period of the Enlightenment, which is unique and characteristic for our Western civilization or culture, that the rational scientific approach has a right to exist independent of any religious doctrines or assumptions. So that means, as I said, I repeat that. So from theocratic, theocentric to anthropocentric, that the value system which has been built is a consequence of the roots of the premises and not the contrary. So, what means that when we think that we, being humankind, that we need to change, we need transformation, we are in a transfer situation, that our value system has to be adapted to the premises we will accept. Which is then the next one, I call it, and the influence of the people I've mentioned and many others in the beginning, is that we have to evolve to the eco-biocentric world vision. That means, in fact, that the human species is not more than another one. Yeah, so Darwin came in the middle of the 19th century, it's not so long ago, that the Earth resources have their limits, and that we have to not the word obey is not good, but to obey the limits imposed. And that refers in some way what IPCC is doing, and that's the very first slide. So, there is another concept which I didn't mention, but you certainly know, the more that the funder, so it's a footprint concept by Matthijs van Kanaren, who has been honored recently, a couple of weeks ago, that he is saying that today already humankind needs 1.5 Earth. So I know one can discuss the calculation way, I know that. So, but nevertheless, giving the change is important, that we are running somewhere. And I think that, or I state, if you want, that our civilization has roots, basic roots in nature, in the earth, in the ecosphere, in the earth sphere, in Gaia as a total. And Gaia in this context is the integration of the atmosphere with the biosphere and the lithosphere. And Lovelock, one has not to agree with everything that Jim Lovelock has written. However, this is a real vision, and added to that this triumvirate or triangle behaves as a physiological system, auto-regulating according to the system, to the parameters which are changing, and in this case, we are changing. So, I'm running out of time. Not yet? No? Okay. So, this is the first time that happens to me, but anyway. So, can we go on? That would be the first question. And in my lectures, I said, which was not really accepted by the students, they said, well, even if we discover a lot of fossil energy sources, we may not use them. So I don't know how you feel that. And so if we look at the first picture of the global warming, IPCC, etc., so we should stop to use them. But what do we see in the previous slide is that the investment, US and all the very few companies, about 10, I don't know, so rule the world and not the reverse, that they invest. So there is a complete negation of what a number of scientists are thinking and looking for. So a colleague, John, well known probably, Shell Huber from the Potsdam Institute on climate change, on the impact of climate change, in a beautiful article, he said, anyway, what we are now learning and accumulating on knowledge, that on the Earth, which was not there before, certainly not in an integrative way that is happening now, there will be, or we are living, a second Copernican revolution. This is an idea I absolutely find fantastic, in the sense that when there has been something really, really important, but perhaps not measured in that sense, is that the Copernicus changed the world vision, that from geocentric to an heliocentric, but at the same time changed completely the picture of man, of itself, of himself. So, what IPCC is doing, what all the publications are bringing, the knowledge which is coming on, and also the threats which are clear. I didn't mention the threats, but they are known: deforestation, water, energy. So there are many. It's not only global warming, by the way. It's much more. Yeah, the biodiversity is claimed by many as essential for our survival. But anyway, so that the vision. Can we escape to evolve to what I call the eco-biocentric vision? So I belong to them that we cannot escape. And it's one thing, but it's not true. And if we try to escape, then in my text I speak about the collapse of societies, of cultures, have happened during the existence of mankind. So this is not new. And there's nobody that can say it will not happen in the future. So that would be silly to say that, in contradiction to the story. So I think I'm coming to the end of my presentation, that the philosophical part is, let us say, maybe what over the heads of the title of the conference, but on cost, etc. So that I am absolutely convinced that if we have to change values, then we have to change the premises that are related to the values. So I am very pessimistic that economists will find a new economy when they don't change the premises. But, so this is only what I'm thinking, so that economists, your president, shouldn't shoot on the pianist. But somewhere there is the logic. And so where to evolve, I don't know, as many others don't know, but still I think that we have to focus on the premises on which our society is built. So I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Weiler. Our next speaker is one of the great motivators and activists of scientific cooperation in the area of scientific cooperation and energy science. He is recognized as a bridge builder between the research environments in the EU, Central and Eastern Europe, and the Commonwealth of Independent States. His specialty is energy and high energy physics. He is not only president of the Montenegrin Academy of Science, but also member of the Club of Rome, European Academy of Science, and World Academy of Arts and Sciences. Dear colleagues, Professor MOV002.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe you don't mind if I speak from here, since I want to see what I'm showing to the audience. Distinguished participants of the conference, the organizer, thank you for inviting me to say a few words on the very hot topic. A friend of mine, Gilbert File, knew that I spent most of my life in energy, so he asked me to speak on the very intriguing title, Energy versus Power. You can talk on different things when you think on energy versus power, from the physics point of view, from a humanistic point of view, from many other points of view. It's not working. No, I'm pressing the right one. Sorry. This one. No, okay, sorry. So I'm not going to talk to you on the definition of what's work, what's energy, what's power from the point of physics. That's for students. That's what we do, lecturing to the students. Or to talk on the definitions, what's work, what's power, what's energy, and so on and so on. Or to talk to you on the forms on the energy. I want just to talk to you on the problems which we have with energy today in this civilization. The question with the energy is shown really on the bottom illustration. It is amusing how energy has been used in the only last few centuries by a human being. And that is what is producing the most of the problem today for this civilization. Generally speaking, if you look to the ages, growth of population and growth of the use of the energy, world consumption, then it is easy to recognize that the gradient of energy consumption is higher than a gradient of increase of the population. So we know definitely that the major problem today is the energy, and the energy is treated in different ways today. Recently I read even that the main cause of nationalism is the energy. You can define problems of energy in any way. You have to distinguish different terms concerning energy. Primary energy use in the world looks as it is shown here, and as Mahatma Gandhi said, that enough. The world has enough for everything's need, but not for every man's greed. That's very nicely shown by the consumption of the primary energy throughout the world. I have to go fast to the slide. You can have it if you want later on your flash. The problem is that 20% of the world population of industrial countries uses 80% of the world energy. And that's what is the really, this figure, 10 to the 6th. If you consider growth of average energy consumption per capita, taking in account increase of population, increase of energy consumption, then you can end in the last millennium that the rise of energy consumption has risen roughly to the 10 to the 6th. And this is nicely shown what we have today by the Human Development Index, energy consumption, kilowatt hour per person per capita. And the problem we have today is to push countries on the right-hand side to the left-hand side, to push countries from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, and then all of them to push down. And that is a problem we have to face and we have to solve. Today we use roughly 13 to 14 terawatts of energy. And 2050, that figure is going to at least double or even triple. And that is something we have to face in all means, especially in economic domain. I'm not going to say, but that is what is going to happen. If we want to satisfy in the next 2 decades minimum needs of energy for growing population, that is between 200 and 300 gigawatt of energy in new generating capacities. If you know that generating capacities have to be replaced, then that figure comes probably to the double or even triple size. What that means, it is easy to speak on energy, on everything, but you have to know, and probably to get astonished, when you know that 1 gigawatt of electrical power, which we use the most, is equivalent to 3 million tons of coal per year. It is equivalent 20 kilometers per solar cells, today's energy efficiency technology. 200 square kilometers of windmills, 2,000 kilometers square of fast-growing trees, and so on, coming to 3 tons per year of helium-3 to supply, for example, China only today. So that is something what we have to face and what we have to fight. If we want to reach in developing countries level of energy consumption which is now in USA or even in Europe, which is roughly 45% of USA consumption, then it is going to be in 2100 year factor 6 of increase in energy. In China and India it is going to be even worse. So energy consumption is obvious why it is increasing. It is increasing because of economic development, especially in developing countries, and because of the growth of population. And if we want to satisfy 10 billion people with elementary needs of energy, that is equivalent of 900 million barrels of oil per year. Astonishing figures. So how we can solve the problem? The only possible way to solve the problem is not the Earth's energy budget. That's energy from the sun and chemical energy in the soil. There is no any other solution at the moment. We can't import steel from other bodies from universal, not only planets, from the moon. Moon is full of thorium. From the moon, moon is not planet. So we don't have technology and it's not still to be efficient. So we have solved this problem using sun and using coal, oil, and nuclear. We get from the sun roughly 100,000 terawatt from sun. Using today's, that's distribution in the water land and so on, using today's technology, for example in photovoltaic, roughly from 10 to 18% most, that's only 0.23% of the Earth's surface. Or using, for example, biomass, 1% efficiency, it's only 4.6% of Earth's surface. So one would say, very easy, no problem. both figures together are less than American army bases on the planet are placed. So you say, no problem, we can solve it easy. How we are going to solve it are different scenarios. This is probably the most common stress. That's from the Institute in Vienna, our guy Nikicinovich and others, but that's another story. But the problem is how we can use the primary energy as a useful energy. And as you know, we have heat, electricity, and mechanical energy as a useful, and primary energy, nuclear, sun, chemical, and so on. So, I don't know, can you read this? But this table shows you how we can use primary energy. In fact, what percentage of efficiency is implied in transformation of primary energy to useful. Probably it is better seen here, for example, electricity, which is used the most. It is only 40% efficiency. We say electricity is 98%. It is in generators, but from the primary energy to that's only 40%. And that is what is producing a number of problems. Very well known today, that's the house gases effect. I'm not going to talk on that. This is a very nice illustration. Human activity, Anthropocene, what produces CO2 and NXO and CHX, and then produces climate change and produces problems, diseases, and different changes in our atmosphere. Basically, we ended up now, I mean, it is hard to say, but many scientists say that we are now emitting twice as CO2 as planet can integrate. So this is just to show you, since we belong, I don't have a pointer, somewhere there, you see. We don't really talk on the, I would say, weather change, probably better than climate change. But you can see that in the area where Croatia, Montenegro, and former Yugoslav countries are, temperature has risen in this period 0.8 centigrade. So that is true. I am not certain that what I said earlier, that we generate twice CO2, which Earth planet can integrate. See, that is some theoretical model, but this is a measurement. I'm not going to talk on different things. I'm just going to say how we can solve the problem. We can solve the problem producing energy, as we say, available, affordable, accessible, and lately, AC stated in the document sustainable. What it means, that is also a set of the problems you saw with availability, reliability, quality of energy, that's mixed energy, accessibility, risk, environmental impact, economic price, and so on. Sustainability means to provide sustainable development. So that's its strategy. And how we do that? You see, if we carry on with business as usual scenario, that's 2% economic growth, then investment in the next period is going to be US 35 to 50 trillion dollars. I'm using figure never known in any investment in the history or in the future. And that is something what bothers all of us. That's only for another 50 years. So we have to think how to avoid that figure. Since we don't have, but the planet doesn't have, human race doesn't have that capacity to put such money in the energy sector. So we have to really think of maximizing energy efficiency and minimizing energy use and to developing new sources of clean energy. And there are many scenarios around. You can find tens and tens of scenarios. All of them you can group after the time we live in two groups, red and green. Basically, red are probably better shown probably here on this one. That's just it. If we carry on with technical expansion, increasing our technology, then we are going to end up no one knows where. If we are somehow sustain our technological development, then it is going to somehow be available for the future. And if we just reduce our use of today's technology, new technology, then we can end up. You can see here, the top curve is available energy sources. We can go only up to that. So definitely the solution is, regardless, Fukushima and everything was happening, nuclear power and renewable energy sources. That's another topic, and I'm not going to talk in brief. What we have to do, I had the privilege to be one of the people who signed 2 years back advert in Economist, asking for a new figure of CO2, 380, instead of 550, which was earlier regarded as a sustainable percentage of CO2 in atmosphere. Definitely we now think of 380, and whatever we do, our knowledge says we have to stabilize CO2 to 380. But another problem is, this as far as energy is concerned, but to provide energy, we need power, not in the physical, how physicist says. I really wonder how my granddaughter and her generation is going to help us to solve energy problems. And what is the power, human power, which can help doing that? We all know that human brain, although that's only 2.5% of body, is the main human power. I'm not going to go into it. And if we compare how human brain and human power has developed in the history biologically and how it has been developed technologically, then we end up really, you can do some analogy, we end up with human being, biological human being, and you end up with an artificial robot, intelligent being. So the question is, can human being, as it is biologically designed, can help us to solve energy problems and other problems which are related to energy, or do we have to go to the artificial intelligence and to some androids? Those are the problems in the universe. You know that the basic problem is the memory. Our brain doesn't have capacity which is needed as to tackle problems in universe. We usually say that complexity of the nature and complexity of human being is different. That complexity of human being has to be increased to tackle complexity of universe of our planet. So that's just to show that we have different action in nature, and that we have to think on femseconds and working in the real time faster than our brain does now. Now this is just to show what has happened in the history, not going to that. But technological evolution is really evolution of the power. I know that many people, especially people from social sciences, don't appreciate it, but that's right. Technology is a power, and it is going to be even more power. So what we can expect from the science to bring to the technology in 21st century and further, such to increase our complexity and to increase and reduce our energy problems. In my view, the major problems which we have to fight and where we have to go is to go to minimize, to miniaturize all things we do. As I will show, that's definitely related to the memory problems, and another is integration. That's systems or interdisciplinary. As far as the miniaturization is concerned, then we mainly quote the Moore's law. And it is questioned when the Moore's law is going to end. Some people say 2020, some people say 2200. But it is going somehow to end. And it is going to increase our artificial intelligence. Probably. showing that. This is what we still have now. You see, this is the size of the Intel atom, which has 47 million transistors. You see, rise beams. Let's move slow. Putting more and more memory in smaller and smaller places. That's different cases of miniaturization, which we have even now. And another problem is cognitive research, different sorts of cognitive research regarding mainly our brain. Not only interaction of the brain, signaling, but diseases too. And there are different fields which we have to tackle, such that we have really to think, is exponential growth of knowledge limited with the human brain? I personally don't think people think it is. I know that many people should say this is nasty, but I personally do think that our memory has limitation, biological limitation. Up to now, it's not possible to increase it naturally. By biology, it is possible to increase it only artificially, and we need that, since we have to tackle many different problems, which are we not able to tackle today as a human being, which we think is the most efficient. So really, we need to organize science completely different. There are many things I stated here. You know, everything is fashionable in the life. Science is a fashionable tool. So we have to change many fashions in the science. The major one is that we have to design science for evolution, not for market, what is the case today. Many other things are here stated too. And to make a map of science which is interactive. You can see here there are fields of interaction of different topics in science which we still haven't discovered. There's a huge free space in this diagram where interaction of different topics in science are going to happen and to bring us new solutions. And that is how we are going to solve energy problems. This is just Michelangelo's pictures, which he drew a long time ago. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Đurović. The speaker that concludes our opening session needs no special introduction. President of the World Academy of Art and Science and President of its Southeast European Division, member of the Board of the Club of Rome and member of the Poop Watch Council, European Leadership Network member, Dean of the University College for International Affairs and Diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor of Physics, Ivo Schlaus.
Dear organizers of the conference, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud and yet humbled to speak to all of you. I'm proud because I think that the title, dealing with energy and dealing with economy, specifically money, is really an essential subject of today and has to be addressed. I'm also very proud that, of course, what the World Academy is doing, and of course you heard two of our distinguished fellows, Momir and Raul, speaking before me, and of course they are experts in these fields of energy and situation. You see that the World Academy is actually addressing both of these questions. And of course it is excellent that the Global Roundtable, and particularly the Forty Foundation and Mr. Haris Yusuf, are also working on this very important question, and we do look forward to continue this work. I'm humbled, of course, because, of course, I'm just a physicist, and you can say, well, though energy, of course, is perfectly all right for a physicist to speak on, but money rarely it isn't. Let me remind you that, of course, it happened to be one famous, of course, physicist. His name was Sir Isaac Newton, who was actually a very distinguished, I would say, Minister of Finance. Remember, he was the head of the Mint, and he did a number of very interesting things. So physicists do have something, of course, to contribute to this subject. Another reason why I'm, of course, extremely proud is that this conference is happening in my hometown. Maybe most of you don't know, since I don't live in Zagreb. I live mainly around the world and sometime in Zagreb, but I was born in Split and my family was from Split, and this is what makes me, in the jargon of Split, the fetivi, which means the really deeply rooted person from Split, and I'm really very, very happy and honored that all of you came to this town that we who have been born in Split regard in many ways as a very, very special town, and I believe you will have an excellent time here. Okay, now, as I said, money, energy, and economy in general are those, are those things which are important in today's time. We are facing the crisis, which is economic and financial, as has been said before by Raoul. The ecological footprint, which means the overuse and overexploitation and pollution, is of the order of almost 1.5. There is a destruction of and threat to humankind common. The humankind common are air, water, Arctic, ocean, bio and cultural diversities. We are facing with inequalities which are not really compatible with what we want to have. And though, of course, in physics and mathematics, the virtual, the imaginary are some normal things to worry about, in economy is a little bit tricky, and the virtual money is considerably larger than the real one. And of course, while the real one is actually, the real one is 50 trillion euros, the virtual one is actually 10 times bigger. Then there is a question of energy, the energy consumption, and the question of the GDP. They are correlated until the level of 3 tons of oil equivalent per year per capita. But if you would put all of the humankind to reach that level, well, today obviously this is not, then you would need 2.6 times more than what you have today. And now a very important thing where we are as a humankind, we are actually using some of the energies, as Professor Gurovich has listed, a number of various energies. We have both renewable and non-renewable, fossil, nuclear. We may be actually approaching in another 20 years or so the use of the fusion. But following the classification made by the Russian physicist Kardashev, we still are in a category of the so-called first type of the civilization. He said that the civilization that it uses the energy of the Earth is the level 1 civilization. The one that it uses all of the energies of our galaxy is, of our solar system is the type 2, and then of course the one that would be using the energy of our entire galaxy would be type 3. Obviously we are far from that. And of course the important point deals with the fact of uncertainty. As a matter of fact, you have heard many times how unhappy we are with the uncertainty. We don't want to live in an uncertain world. On the other hand, all of us who know even a little bit physics know that the basis of the entire world is the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So of course, when we talk about the uncertainties at this level in the social and economic sciences, things are much, much trickier. Humans are both rational and of course irrational. Not only that this is something that Keynes and leading economists wrote, George Soros wrote a lot about this as well. When we look at the development of the humankind, this is the well-known graphs, which shows, of course, the number of millions of motor vehicles and telecommunications and water use and so on and so on. And then you see actually the population is one of the things which has increased, but actually much less than anything else. Raoul previously was talking about the question of the impact that has been produced by humans in this age, which is called the Anthropocene, as suggested by Professor Crutzen, also another fellow of the World Academy. In terms of the biodiversity, we have broken the limits. In terms of the nitrogen cycle, we have broken the limit. There is a question, of course, whether we are producing too much of the CO2 and what does it mean. And here, if we have it in numbers, okay, these are the pre-industrial time compared with the current, and you see those in bold indicate those where we have really passed the limits. Okay, now let's address the question of the economy. Is there a free market? And many economists would say that no, really not, because both society and governments in particular interfere with the market and make it not really true free. Free market concept actually assumes, as we have said before, a complete, reliable information for all participants, and that is not certainly true. And of course the question is that how market works. It works in such a case that you should not put an extraordinary amount of money artificially created, and when you look just the data for the UK, just the period from last 50 years, then you see that the money has been much, much bigger. And then of course there are a number of other conditions that have to be realized. And in many ways, when you look now at the crisis, one could say that there are indications of market failures. One is the ecological footprint, the other are the bubbles, the third are the question of the unemployment, and then the inequality. Let me just say that Plato, when he writes, he argues for the difference of 5 to 1 among the income of the richest and the income of the poorest. Morgan, at the turn of the 20th century, was for 20 over 1. Now we have 10,000 or more. Now, of course, it's also frequently said that the technology kills employment. That obviously is not supported. The ILO World of Work report indicates that population increased in this interval of the 50 to 2010. The population increased by 168%, while employment increased even more. Now, concerning the inequalities, there is unfortunately a correlation between bad health and social indicators that deteriorate as inequality increases. And then, of course, there is a very important question: how do we measure? We all know that, of course, Kelvin was pointing out that unless you measure and you know what you are measuring, you cannot really sensibly talk about anything. So what is done in economics? And economics is being measured by the gross domestic product. Hazel Henderson actually called that grossly distorted picture, by the way. When it was introduced by Kuznets, when he spoke at the US Congress, he argued that the welfare of the nation cannot be measured by GDP. This was repeated by the first Nobel laureate in economics, Jan Tinbergen. And of course, in one of his last speeches, Bob Kennedy said that GDP is not a good measure. Now, there are a number of other measurements that have been introduced, yet why still we are with the GDP? Because GDP is something that measures quickly. We have it very regularly in short time intervals, and a number of other things where you would like to really take the lead, to take into account other things like deleting war and violence, any kind of that increase in equality, measure what is the employment, measure the effect of the ecological footprint, and also measure how close one is approaching the knowledge base of society. Yes, one can do it. We have done it also in the World Academy. There are a number of other attempts where one can indeed do these things, but the price to be paid is that indeed you have effects which come, measurements which come a little bit later than as promptly as the GDP. Let me point out, of course, that GDP, as we all know, measures economic activity. GDP of the world is of the order of 50 trillion euros. GDP of the United States is of the order, I believe now, of 15 trillion euros. But there is a recent estimate done within the UN University and the University of Cambridge to measure the real wealth of nations. This came out just recently, and it includes, of course, the human, the natural, and the human-made capital. And when you look at this, and you take the data for the 2008, then you see that the United States is not those, whatever it is, as I quoted, around 14, 15 trillions, but is really 117.8 trillion, and the human capital is 75%. For the UK, is actually even more, even for countries which are really very, very rich in natural capital like Saudi Arabia, Brazil, and Russia, still the human capital actually is at least 20, and as much in Brazil as 62%. So human capital is one of the very, very important things, and this is, of course, health, education, but much more the freedom and the choices that human beings have, and the activity of human beings. And as Torres from the ILO said, the narrow focus on fiscal austerity is deepening the job crisis. And here are some estimates. There was an estimate made in '97 in Nature that the measure of the natural capital of the world is about twice as large as the GDP, and now when we measure this real wealth of nation, then we see that it is of the order of the 10 times more than the GDP. So this is something that can really be used. And of course, it has been said by the Nobel laureates on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of the first Nobel Prize, they said, as never before, the future of each one of us depends on the good of all. Now this is by no means new. This is the famous golden rule contained in all of the major civilizations, all of the major religions. And if you look very carefully, already 100 years ago, actually more than 100 years ago, Darwin emphasized what is meant by the concept of your neighbor, and he pointed out that your neighbor is actually the citizen, anybody on this earth, because we do depend on all of that. Now, of course, we come to another important interplay between the governance and the economy. We have now a global world, but no global governance. We are living in a world which is global and rapidly changing. And this is really for the first time that we are faced with that. There is an interesting book that came recently, just a few months ago, by MOV002 and Robinson, Why Nations Fail. And they do indeed point out that this failure is very intricately linked with the problem in governance, or if you want, as we call it sometimes, politics and so on. Our world is not global when it has to react, when it has to anticipate, stimulate, and generate desirable changes. Then our world becomes fragmented. Then we come, of course, to the subject of money, which is one of the very, very important subjects of this conference. Money, of course, is technology, is a social organization to facilitate communication. In many ways, is actually like language. Okay? Money itself, of course, this paper has no inherent values, but money acquires meaning because it represents the productive capacity of the society. It is very old, as a matter of fact, more than 10,000 years ago, even before the agricultural period. Banks, quote unquote, had the Persians and the Egyptians. Then, of course, the first coins are those done in Lydia, the island of Aegina in Greece. Then it was international banking. And then the fiat money, the money that we have nowadays, has been introduced in 180 BC in China, and then the printed banknotes have been introduced also in China. Psychological capacity to place trust, and let me emphasize this word, trust, in each other, and therefore promote welfare of the society. Money, as anthropological and linguistic research indicates, is even older than trade. Usually we connect it with this. And of course, as the English word pound, which is also the word for money and for weight, is missing, so is the shekel. Then of course what we have to worry is that in addition to monetized and unmonetized money, there is also a lot of those things which are not easy in principle to monetize. There is no limit of how much money or how many kinds of money can be created. Money evolves constantly to meet new needs. For instance, in the 19th century in the United States, they had different, many different currencies. The refusal of England to assure sterling liquidity was one of the reasons. We had, in the last 40 years, there were major instabilities, financial instabilities. There is a vast unmet human needs confronted to vastly underutilized capacity. People are willing to work, unable to find a job. In the United States, there are 18 million empty homes, and there are 3 million homeless, and one worries why they are still. Today's society has capacity to meet the basic needs of all humans. The fact that it fails, that we need, implies we need better, possibly alternative or even parallel money systems. And now, of course, when we saw in that little movie presented about Tesla, AC, alternative current, of course, can be also used as alternative currency. So let me go to the question of the alternative currency. Can be created by an individual, corporation, local, national government. Complementary currencies have been already known for quite some time. One of our distinguished fellows, Bernard Lietard, together with some of his collaborators, one of his collaborators, I think, is among us, has worked and has recently published within the European chapter of the Club of Rome, the book called Money and Sustainability, and it deals precisely with the question of complementary currency. Complementary currency has been put in operation after the First World War, at the time of the Great Depression, and really it eliminated about 25% of unemployment and revived economic growth in a few months. There is in Japan the Fureikipu, there is a local eco money, also in Japan, quite successful. There is an idea of the dual currency. We have been proposing, for instance, that in Greece, rather than the austerity measures, maybe one should try to introduce both drachma and keep the euro. There is a proposal of one world currency, was forwarded by Cooper and previously by Nobel laureate Mandel. There is a question of the interest-free money or interest very close to zero, the so-called neutral money network. These are just a number of these various ideas. What we have now is, of course, the gold standard, which no longer exists, where $1 was put equal to 889 milligrams of gold. But that is not sustainable. And here you see why it is not sustainable, and you see that Keynes was also arguing for that. Of course, as a pro is long history and limits. Con is obviously that gold has nothing to do. I'm sorry. As a contrary, that gold has absolutely nothing to do with the standard of living, and then it does sound a little bit stupid to mine the gold and then to stick it back in the vaults. You know, you take it from the earth and then put it back into the vaults. Then, of course, is what we have now, and that is the fiat money, namely governments just simply declares how much money we will have. And then there is the idea of the energy standard, and I hope that this will be something that we will be discussing here. Is interesting that it was Henry Ford that proposed it in 21, notice very clearly. It was Mr. Fuller, by the way, in 69. He was also one of the founders of the World Academy. You could, of course, speak of petrodollars, of Exi-energy, of eco-dollars. And then, of course, you could define $1 to be equivalent to 17 kilowatts of energy. Namely, to have a dollar, in this case dollar or euro, doesn't matter, backed by a fixed amount of electricity. So maybe over there, one should be putting a new wording. The bearer guarantees to have, 17 or 5 kilowatt hours. Pro, of course, is government's action are rigorously tested daily. There is no storage, but a guaranteed supply. Money and electricity, in this respect, they are both a quantity which would be flowing. Here is an attempt of energy-backed money where they are grading gold, fiat, and energy, and you see in a number of things, the grade for the energy-backed is by far best. There's always AA, in some cases A-, while of course, in case of the fiat money, in many ways you have Ds, and you have also 2 Ds in the case of gold. The point pointed out by Lewis Waite more than 10 years ago is that most of the money we have is the money created by commercial banks to make profit. Now, number of the questions dealing with what is money, the role of money. Obviously, money has a social role, is now fulfilled or not. Does money perform currently its social role? Money versus other social institutions. The effect of money on natural, social, and human capital. It was very common at the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall to speak about the end of history, the end of this, the end of that, and Thomas Greco Jr. wrote a book on the end of money. Role of money in economic and social development. Can we have a money system allowing not only competition and stimulating competition, but also cooperation? Presently, money is regarded as a scarce resource. Maybe it isn't. What is the purpose of banking? Does banking system perform its real social role? Why does our money system lead to resource misuse? The question, of course, is in which way is the money a source of the financial crisis? And of course, here the question of the seigniorage, and of course, maybe even more basic questions. Money dominance and similarly retirement are recent phenomena. We definitely did not have this dominance of money 300, 400, 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago. Then there is a question of growth, development, and our finite world, as were addressed by my predecessor, Raoul Weiler. Then there is a great divorce that we, the World Academy, addressed in our journal Cadmus, the divorce between finance and economy, and then even greater between economy and the human welfare. And the paradox involving uncertainty and values. Then the question, of course, of the property. I believe it was Saint Bernard who said, it is truly mine, only those things which I gave to others. Now we have to speak about the private, about the sovereign, by sovereign states, and the global commons. In physics, of course, we do have limitations, and we know that, for instance, certain laws, the laws of classical physics, are valid only in certain domain and not elsewhere. Do we have the same story in economy or not? And then, of course, are both socialism and capitalism, in a way, things which are, in a way, outmoded. I remember a joke which I heard when I visited Poland at the time when it was still under the communist regime, and the story was, you know, a foreign Western economist comes and asks a Polish economy, how about capitalism? And of course, a Pole replied, capitalism is already on the brink of a disaster. And then he asked, and how about the socialism? And the Pole replied, one step ahead as always. So of course what happened is that definitely socialism is not a system that is viable system, but the question is whether the capitalism as we consider it has to be changed. And of course I would say definitely it has to be changed, because we are now living in a world which is totally different from the one which was actually in front of the eyes of Adam Smith when he wrote The Wealth of Nations. But let us also never forget, it was Adam Smith who was not an economist, because at that time there was no economy, he was the founder of economy. Adam Smith was primarily a moral philosopher, and he was concerned with human beings. And for him, economy was to talk about human beings, and though he did not specifically develop the concept of the human capital and everything that goes there, he knew that this is the most important capital that it is. And through the work of Nikola Tesla, through joining the energy and the economy, I think we come very close to fulfilling what I hope was the dream of Adam Smith and also of Nikola Tesla, to really work for a world which would be a world good for human beings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Schlaus. So we have 20 minutes for the Q&A session. And I would like to hear your questions for all the speakers. So, do you have questions? Yes. Please, let's start. Just wait a minute for the microphone, please.
My name is Bruno from the European Academy of Sciences and Arts. Thank you, all three speakers, for the excellent presentation. As I'm already used to hear Ivo Schlaus, his presentation was especially impressive and all-embracing many questions which we are discussing in the next few days. So you made some relation between energy and the monetary system, and you enumerated quite a lot of questions in how far there can be a relation. And I think some facets is very clear that there might be a relation. And therefore I have the question to the two preceding speakers, to Raul and to Mormer, if they think that the relation between the energy and the monetary system can be developed in the future, let us say in a decade or even longer. Because in your speeches you enumerated mainly the question of energy, for you, Robert, especially, and the artificial intelligence in Morber's speech. So, as I think the relation between energy and the monetary system is also vital for these two speeches, I would like to ask you to have some hints what you are thinking about. Thank you.
More questions? Excuse me.
Let me just say that energy is really one of the hottest topics we have to face, but that's not the only one. You don't have to forget that materials are too a problem, not less important than energy. Let me just quote the example. You know that rare materials are very dear today, and that South Africa is an important country because it is the richest country with rare materials. But if I ask you, we can't do many things today without rare materials, especially in electronics and many other things. But if I ask you, where are the most rare materials today, you would probably don't know the answer. I will tell you, it is in the fundaments of Chinese motorics. 70% of rare materials are in the fundaments of Chinese motorics. So, you can have energy, but you don't have materials. So, everything is not in the energy. Energy is really important, but we have to consider many other things too. That's as far as the energy. But let me just say an anecdote, which is true, as far as artificial intelligence is concerned. A famous scientist, American, who is dealing with artificial intelligence. By the way, people who are in robotics, in motorics, they already know that human motorics is not as good as we thought. So they use algorithms in robotics more sufficient than human algorithms in motorics. That's already technology. As far as the brain is concerned, American scientist who is a great believer in artificial intelligence, who is forecasting, not only him, that in 200 years we will have a more sufficient human brain, artificial human brain, than a natural, biological human brain. When he was asked how then we are going to recognize who are they, who are we, then he said, I'm not certain even today that we are we. So, you know, that is an open question, thinking on intelligence. The problems we have with biological human brain, as far as my experience is, that's speed and memory. We today work with exaflops and with femtoseconds. Tomorrow we are going to work, I don't know in which units, much more energy than human brain has, and bigger speed than signaling, biological signaling human brain. That's something that's going to happen definitely. We can't stop it. And that's going to solve many other problems, which we can't solve today. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Weiler?
Well, I don't know if I have an answer to your question, but about money and economics, I have some interest. I'm a chemist, by the way, so to the work of Rögen, Georgescu Rögen, who was Romanian and tried or applied thermodynamics to economy. I've tried to read it, and so we have a group now in Brussels trying to understand what he meant. So let me say that I feel what is missing is although it concerns all the activities of every day, etc., etc. So it's missing a formalism where the major parameters of the economy are present and related to each other. I would say in a formal mathematical way, but that could be a tree. But anyway, so if the thermodynamics would be more developed, as I know, at the status of today in economics, maybe there would be clarification on the limits. What we see, human activity in general, yeah. So we are not aware of limits. What I try to say about the nature, eco and biocentric, is that we don't respect them. Deforestation of what's going on. Yeah. So the notion of limits is something which is absent in our usual thinking. It is present in the physics, in laws of physics, I think so. It is certainly there in laws of thermodynamics. So we somewhere that has to be clarified. So, and I think it will help. It will help. Full stop. As to money as such, I would say it's in the same way of thinking that, and I like very much the idea, the universal definition, or now analogy, or the analogy with the universal notion of definition of energy, which is understood by everyone, which is used in all, and it's all in one. Yeah. So one could compare it with the time, the notion of time, which has been defined in the 19th century or maybe the 18th. But we use all of us use time. So I do feel that in opposition to local currencies, when you travel a little bit, I'm coming from a small country, so when I travel 100 kilometers, I have crossed 3 borders. So then one is happy with some global. Okay, but anyway, the notion of a universal exchange as energy is as well. Yeah. So this belongs to my dreams, if I may say.
Thank you, thank you. So next question from Sean Turnbull.
Thank you. My name is Sean Turnbull, I'm a fellow of the 40 Foundation. I'd like to ask the panel, what are their ideas about how we could design an economic or monetary system to discourage the plague of people on the planet. A lot of people think that a lot of the solution could be reducing the number of people living on the planet, so we don't have the problems are mitigated by getting the population, instead of going to 10 million, down to 2 or 3 million. So what are your thoughts about designing a monetary system or an economic system to encourage that end?
Thank you. And who is your question addressed to?
To any member of the panel.
Okay.
I think you have an extremely difficult question, which is not easy. I would be very, very glad if we make, all of us, some contribution through these meetings, how to do this. It's not easy. I mean, we do know that the system, the economic system we have now, is in many ways good, but is not adequate for the situation we have. We similarly know that the system, political governance system we have today is definitely better than what we had 50 years ago. There is a lot of successes that we have achieved. I mean, the Montreal Treaty certainly is a success. The sea of the law, the law of the sea is certainly a success. On the other hand, the fact that we keep coming back and back without success to the question of the, let's call it global warming, or the pollution, is a sign that obviously things are not good. So it's not easy. I don't think that I was a lawmaker for about 4 years. I was a member of the parliament. I don't think that one does very much there by imposing certain strict laws or enforcing them. I think we have to work on a better system. I'm not sure what a better system is, but I'm sure of one thing. I don't think it's a system where one or few people decide the best world for everybody else. It's really democracy, more democracy, much more democracy than what we have now, which I think is an approach, a humble approach toward a better world. But we have also to realize that the world is constantly changing. So these changes will produce something. So you are actually putting a very, very high question, and whatever, if I understood it properly, and whatever small things we do is good. And let us just be, as von for instance, said, let's be humble enough when we approach and try to modify our civilization. We have to realize that what we have now is actually a fruit of millions and billions of people, and not a single genius can actually change that. Let's do things where we can do, and this is science, technology, things that Tesla has done so marvelously, and not only he, thousands of others. I mean, let's do that rather than devising, making, you know, efforts that would cause all other people to allegedly follow one recipe. I don't think we have it, at least. I don't see it. I don't know whether I gave anything as close as what you asked us.
I'm not an economist by profession. I'm an economist in my family. But if we don't answer to your question, probably we would sit in the World Bank or in the International Monetary Fund. Very complicated question. In my knowledge, we don't appreciate that everything has changed. And in economy, many economists today just behave as the old-fashioned economists. They remind me of the English king who stood at the shore and said, "Tide don't come." They just keep repeating all the theories and everything else that has happened earlier. I personally appreciate very much Kiichi Ohma, Japanese guy, very famous. I think some of his books were translated by Institute for Economy in Zagreb, who said, we don't count time from BC, we count time from BG. BG is acronym of Billy Gates for Internet, saying whatever would happen before we introduce free communication is not valid anymore. I know only that what Alan Greenspan wrote in his book, Age of Turbulence, is not a proper economy. He wrote, dollar is our money and it's your problem. We had recently Colombato, a very well-known economist from Turin, delivering the lecture with the many figures. You're economists, you know. He stated exactly that the Central European Bank has bankrupted because it published, if I remember properly, 2,000 billion euros more than should. So, your question is very complicated. It is very political, more than professional, and unfortunately, I'm certain that in the near future, professionals are not able to help more. Politicians are going to do everything, unfortunately. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance.
Thank you. We have 3 more questions. Please, the gentleman. Yes.
Anton Bischoff, agricultural smallholder in Britain. One very small remark. King Canute on the shores of Britain was sitting in front of the rising tide to show the limits to his real power, to show that he could not stop. It's a different interpretation. But my main question is about the free market to Professor Schloss. It's really a proposition. In your display, you mentioned the question of, is there a free market? And it's followed by the remark that the society and governments interfere with it. Now that to me is the farmer, I have a symbiotic relationship with foxes and poultry. That to me is the fox's point of view, namely the hens interfere with the free market. The other point of view, which we must not forget, is that the biggest interference in the free market comes from monopoly capital. It's just a proposition.
I'm sorry, I did not hear the last part of your sentence. You said that the highest interference in the free market is...
comes from lobbying capital, the owners of capital, who are interfering with the real freedom of the market.
Yes.
From the point of view of the
Yes.
poultry, I go to market and sell my vegetables, that's my point.
Yeah. No, this is certainly true, yes. And this is a question, of course, this freedom of the market is a question that I think needs to be discussed, that whether it's a desirable thing or we want to have regulations, and what kind of regulations we want to have, this is another issue, and I think that this is worthwhile discussing, by all means.
Sorry. I forgot to add, the state should protect the free market.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Which it doesn't, of course.
Okay.
If I understood your question, I'm hearing problems about limits. Yeah. I think you mentioned the word limits, is it right? Yeah. So, just as information that today in France, Spain, and also the US, there is some thinking going on the word décroissance, degrowth. And so it comes from the leftist thinkers, yeah. Intellectuals are generally in that category, but not all. But anyway, so I think we should consider and follow the thinking. So I'm not saying that I should participate as another, but follow what is taught there by these economists and sociologists. Then, if we look to observations about where the planet is going, where our Earth is going, we see the limits actually, but they are not accepted. So the slide I showed from the Harvard Business School, yeah, they invest in things that actually enhance our situation. So somewhere, I don't know, for this country or for the region, which is different. So generally different in the sense that generally when we speak, the rich countries are speaking. Yeah. So the discourse for development, of course, I was in Africa a couple of times, is a different discourse, but it doesn't exist. Or it exists, but it is not brought in the whole picture. So anyway, what I'm saying, just as information, that there is some thinking going on degrowth, and I feel that we should take it serious. So the very first slide was from Dennis Meadows. And Dennis Meadows, who is one of the authors at that time, postdoc at MIT in the 60s, end of the 60s. He was interviewed recently, a couple of weeks ago, by the newspaper Le Monde. I don't know if this is familiar here, but it's the French newspaper, quite intellectual. And he was saying, there was a first question that was in the government, the new government coming on in France. And the journalist asked Dennis to say, what would you recommend to the new government? I would say, well, nothing. They don't listen anyway. So just to say, the seriousness of the critics. And so I was member of the board, the International Board of the Club of Rome, and so they have been lobbying, in quotes, by the founders, by Aurelio Peccio, at the UN, at the White House in Russia, everywhere for many years. His successor was director of the OECD in Paris. Also, they had a fabulous network, and it is now recognized at the board that what is the result? It is very, very low. So I bring that, new ideas, and so degrowth is something, is new to address it. And so I would only express a wish to join the thinking about it. And so in the end, also Dennis was saying, anyway, in the next 20 years, we will see changes we have never seen, or humanity has never seen. So we are facing, especially from rich countries, we are not in a building phase, but in trying to stabilize what we have now. So it is not a conception, but the way of living, that is put into question. And we fear, we are sure, we are fear, it's the ambiguity in which situation we are, and we will not be very fast driving against the wall. Why? That the phenomena which are taking place are non-linear, which we didn't understand 50 years ago, let me say, and earlier. They are much faster than we expect, or the way of our thinking. So the non-linear behavior of phenomena, all of them, also on Earth, in the economy, in everything, yeah, in education, progress in education. So all this I plead, if there would be an openness to try to follow up or to join the movement somewhere, the thinking movement, not the action movement, the thinking movement, of what degrowth can mean in the coming years. I was too long, sorry.
Thank you, thank you. So we have two more questions left. First from